I'm also recording this, so if anyone wants to review it at another time, you can do
Oh,
that
thank you so
because
much.
you're probably going to see a lot of stuff that you're not going to remember right off the bat. So it might be helpful to review. And I will say, off just as full disclosure, most of the things that I'm going to show you, if later on you think to yourself, "Well, I want to do that thing that he showed," you can Google it and you'll probably find something that tells you how to do what you want to do. Most of the stuff I've learned how to do in video editing, I've just thought of something I wanted to happen on screen, didn't know how to do it. I Googled how do you do X, and usually there's someone who's figured it out and shared it. So it's just it takes that's a little time consuming, but it works. So I'm gonna go ahead and share. All right, so you should all be able to see my PowerPoint screen, the opening slide. Is that is that accurate? Just
Yes,
making
that's
sure.
it.
All right,
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. There's times where I've started up a class and 5 minutes in that
Yeah,
since
no.
that's when they decide to tell me that I don't see what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically we're talking about making tutor videos, and just a little background on myself. I teach full time at a community college outside of Philadelphia called Bucks County Community College, and my main discipline is human anatomy and physiology. And for the last couple of years, I've been teaching the tech portion of advanced trends at in Bangkok for TCNJ. And in our course, which Win was able to be in last year, we talked a lot about building websites and making videos that can help you do a flipped classroom model or something like that, not knowing what was coming in terms of pandemic learning and remote courses being thrust upon all of us. So I've been teaching online since 2005, and I teach a biology course online with a lab. So I've been pretty deep in it for quite some time now. And I do a lot of what I deliver content. The way I deliver content in a lot of ways for my students is through tutor videos that I make. And basically, let's see. Why tutor videos? So they give students access to your content outside of class. You can use it for a flipped class model. You can make them so students can review what you've done in class, or for remote or online teaching. And that's basically kind of a basic idea. I'm sure you can think of even more reasons why you would use a tutor video. But then I thought of this. Someone asked me a question, what do you mean by tutor video? And, I never really thought about it that way. But basically, I think of a tutor video as a short, pointed, asynchronous video to get a particular point across to a student, whatever your discipline is, whether it's a math, some kind of math function that you want to teach, or if it's something in science, or if it's something if it's something you want to talk about in social studies that you want to explain to students that they can watch at home. So I'm going to go over some best practices in general of what tutor videos should be and look like, and how they're the most effective. And a lot of this is based on some research I've done, or some of them on presentations I've attended at conferences over the last few years. One is you want to make the videos accessible. And when I say accessible, I mean that in a few different ways. One is make sure they can get it. Post it in a format that students can obtain. I use YouTube a lot because it's real easy. Vimeo, Youku in China, if you're in a country where YouTube's not available, you can use something else. But what I prefer is to not make the students have to download it. You can post them in a learning management system like Canvas, but often those learning management systems give you a finite amount of data. And these videos can be pretty large files. So I wouldn't recommend doing that, or forcing the students to download the video, because again, a 5-minute tutor video in high definition can be, half a gigabyte. So So this YouTube has worked really well for me. You can post YouTube videos that are unlisted, meaning that only people with the link can find it. So if you don't want the general public seeing your tutor videos that you made for your class, then you can do that. You can make it private so that students have to log in to their Gmail account, and you approve which Gmail users are allowed to see your video, or you can just make it unlisted where they have to have the link. And then you post the link in your learning management system, and there they go, they have it. So that works really well. But also make it accessible from an ADA, from an Americans with Disabilities Act component, which would be make sure that you put captions in it for hearing impaired viewers. That's a big thing. Sometimes you can do text alternatives for images that you post in your video. So if there's an image in your video of an anatomical structure, you can put alternative text in there to describe for students who have visual impairments. So making it accessible for people with disabilities is also really important. Now, the good news is that a lot of the streaming services will auto caption for you. It's not the best captioning, especially if you're teaching a science course where the auto captioning robot never heard of a lot of the words you're using. But it is a good backup plan to have that's going to save you a lot of time, because captioning does take a little bit of time. There are some tricks about making captioning not take so much time, and I'll fill you in on those a little bit later on some tips for that. But captioning is important. Even if you just let YouTube do it, that's fine. The most accurate captioning you'll have is the ones that you type in yourself and that are embedded in the video. And then basically this line just summarizes what I was just saying. All right. Let's see. If you're trying to reach me, rather than post in the chat, I would just unmute yourself and speak up, because it's hard for me to see the chat. It's hard for me to see chat thing. Okay. Yeah, if you have something else that you want to share, feel free to unmute yourself and chime in. That's probably the best way to do it, rather than me searching for
If
chat
you
things.
don't
Yep.
mind.
Sure.
Okay, where in the YouTube studio do you put in the captions for your video?
So I don't typically do that in YouTube Studio. What I do is I caption it in the editor itself. And then the captions are included in the file that I'm uploading to YouTube. If you're using YouTube, YouTube will auto caption. So, so in terms of like actually entering your own manual captions into YouTube Studio, that I'm not familiar with.
I don't think you can do that. But one thing I noticed is, and some of you may have noticed this, is that in Zoom, so if you do a video in Zoom, Zoom will email you almost immediately when you shut down the recording, a transcript of your video. And it's not perfect, but you could always cut and paste it and fix things up. So that's another possibility.
Yeah, if you're going to use Zoom to record yourself doing an on-camera video, or recording yourself doing a whiteboard video that you narrate as you go, that's a good way to do that. That you can get a transcript. All right, let's move on. Okay, another thing is keep the video short. Students typically don't want to watch 15, 20, 25-minute videos. Those we would probably call lecture videos versus tutor videos. So typically I go about 5 minutes or less is my kind of rule of thumb. I break it occasionally, and I kind of let the content dictate that in some cases. But I shoot for about 5 minutes or less on any given time. So definitely I wouldn't get into double digits. You will lose viewers' interest. Oh, sorry, I have to weird sputtering here. So attention spans are short no matter the age of your viewer. So it's not even just like a whether it's you're doing K to 12 and their attention spans are less than if you're doing higher ed. I don't think it really matters. I think that length on the video is pretty standard. Also, stay on topic. You'll lose the viewer's interest if you're all over the place. For this, I'm going to talk about one of my recommendations on how to record later, and that is I recommend that writing a script that you follow in advance of your recording. A lot of times what people will do is they'll just turn the recorder on and just go. And because it's a topic that they know really, really well, so why not just go ahead and talk about it? And sometimes that tends to lend to a really long time in the editing process because you start to ramble a little bit, or there's a lot of ums and ahs, and you want to get those out, and then you went back and forth a couple times on your topic. So getting a real good script honed is going to seem like a little laborious in front, but it is a time saver. And then assess your content. So if you are going to give your students a tutor video about something that is important to your course, make sure that you're going to assess that as well. Make sure that that is based on learning outcomes that are part of your course, and you should definitely outline those learning outcomes and identify those learning outcomes, and then assess them after to see if this video is doing what you hoped it would do. So that's just kind of things you probably already knew. When you're making the audio component of a video, how fast should you speak? That's what a lot of people ask me. Well, I made one and I was talking way too fast. And so what I found in over the last few years and in myself, and then also in some research about it, is about 140 words a minute seems to be a really good pace for students to get what you're saying. So what's important also is the pausing in the audio after important pieces of information. Like if you finish talking about a particular topic, and I'll show you some examples in a little bit. It's good to give a good 3-4 seconds for them to see to absorb what's on your screen when you're done talking before you move right on to the next topic. So the pauses in the audio for them to absorb is also really important. So I'll give you this with the 140 words a minute. I've made that a really strict rule for myself, and I actually now know that when I write a script, I use the word count feature in Microsoft Word, and when I go over 750 words in the script, that's when I start cutting it out, and make them think maybe this needs to be 2 videos if I need to go up to 1,000 words, because that's going to be a pretty long video now. So if you're speaking at about 140 words a minute, you've got about 750 words to be somewhere around that 5-minute mark, if you're speaking at the right pace. Usually you should use an external microphone for your best quality. I wouldn't use the microphone that's embedded in your computer. So if you could use like earbuds, or if you can use a mic you can plug in that you can pin to your shirt, that's going to give you the best audio quality. Those are pretty cheap. And like I said earlier, prepare learning outcomes and then write a script that covers them rather than just speaking off the top of your head. So when you speak off the top of your head, like I said, you might tend to ramble, and you'll end up having to do a lot of editing. So if you prepare learning outcomes and write a script that covers those learning outcomes the way you want to, you can read that script, or you really kind of use that script. You want to really perform the script is probably a better way to put it, rather than just reading it. But having that guideline is going to be really helpful. All right.
Real quick, just for the students who are in internship 1, I just want to clarify for you guys that you are going to be doing like up to a 10-minute video because it's replicating a lesson. So it's not your standard tutor video, just so you don't have any confusion on that point. If you're doing the tutor videos that you watch, like Steve's talking, you're going to reduce the time. But for us, you get 10 minutes.
All right. Okay. So, now I want to cover, does anybody else have any questions? All right.
Do you know of perhaps
Okay.
any app that instead of like doing like reading the script and like checking like the word count as you're like timing the thing, is there perhaps maybe an app that like records the rate that you speak? Maybe.
I don't usually have, I don't know if there's an app that records how many words per minute you're speaking, but what I usually do is I will use my phone, I'll use the timer on my phone, and I will time myself reading the script before I actually do the recording. And that way I can see how far over I'm getting.
Okay.
So now for me, knowing the pace that because I've made over 115 of these, I'm at a point where I know if I make my script 750 words, it's going to be a 5-minute video. So eventually it'll become so second nature for you to speak at the pace that's going to be appropriate for a tutor video that that you won't have to do that. But in the beginning, what I would recommend you do is time yourself reading the script and see how long it takes you to read your script. If you have a 500-word script and you get through it in a minute, you're talking too fast, or 2 minutes even, right? So that kind of thing is the way you want to hone it. I don't know if there's an app that will see how many words per minute you're speaking. But there is I will say this though, and I'm gonna show you a little bit later. There's an app, you might want to try this one. So there's an app, there's a bunch of apps that act as teleprompters. Right. So teleprompter is like what the people on the news use to read, so that they can read the news, and it's usually right in front of the camera. So I'm going to show you a little later. There's an app that you can use on your phone so that you can use your phone's front-facing camera to record yourself if you want to be on camera, and your script will run up along the right side of your screen so that you can read it. You can set the timing on how fast it brings up your script to 140 words per minute. So kind of, there are apps that do it from the other direction that you're talking about, right? So they will force you to read it at the pace that's appropriate. All right, so let's look at some of the tools that are, you're welcome. Let's look at some of the tools that are available to make your videos. These are editors, not so much the recorders yet. We'll talk about how to record what you want to do. So there's a couple of free ones. Well, there's a few free ones. For Apple, iMovie is probably one you're familiar with. It usually comes with the Apple's operating system. It is free, which is really nice. It is limited in how well you can annotate your movies or your videos. So one thing that's really important to me, and is also the research shows us as well, is that you want to make sure that your viewers' eyes are drawn to the part of the screen you're talking about. So also you want to reinforce the words you're saying with text on the screen. So annotating the videos is another really important aspect. So iMovie's not great at that. It is a little limited in whether you can put arrows to point to things you're talking about or put text in it exactly where you want it. I mean, you can. There are titles that you can add, and you can amend those titles to do those things. It is free, which is great, and you can do a lot of stuff with iMovie. You might have to do some workarounds to get some features in there. Like you might have to download an arrow image to just pop in there whenever you want to point to something or things like that. So it's a little limited, but it is free and it can do a lot of things that you want to do. I typically here I'm going to jump a slide real quick here. For Windows, Movie Maker is their free version. It's basically their version of iMovie, and let's see, I had a I'm going to show you more. I'm going to show you more detail later. Sorry, I decided to put more detail in later on. So for Windows, it's Movie Maker. That's the free version, and it's going to look very similar to iMovie. And I use something called Camtasia. Camtasia is not free, but it's a lot of schools have site licenses for it because it's really widely used for making educational videos the way we want to make them. And what Camtasia has, which is really nice, is a screen recorder. Now, most of your computers or tablets will have their own native screen recorder, which is what we call screen capture, which basically means, and I have slides on this later, that'll record what's happening on your computer screen. Camtasia has a really good one built into the program that will not only record your screen, but it'll record whatever piece of your screen you want to. It will also, you can choose to record the system audio, so you don't have to be real quiet and play your audio through your speakers and into your own microphone. If you want to record like something online that is a video itself, or an animation that exists online that you want to get into your video, you can check on this button that says System Audio, and then you can just record what's happening in your on your computer screen, and then you can turn off your microphone, and then you don't have to be quiet. You can just go ahead and record, and it'll take everything in a really high quality audio. That's a real nice one. Yeah.
So real quick, so Camtasia, you can do I think, what is it, 30 days free?
Yeah,
so
there's a free trial.
So if your school doesn't have it and you play around with it for a couple weeks and you're like, I really like this, I've been hearing, and it's even happening at TCNJ, where we're getting these emails saying, what do you need? Right? We need to start moving a lot of things online. What tools do you need? So this might be something, if your school doesn't have a site license for, that you make a request for if you play around with it and you like it.
Yeah, the only downside of the 30-day free trial is that your video will have a watermark behind it for the whole video. And the watermark is actually kind of prominent. So that's the only downside. Otherwise, you get access to all the features that you would in the full version. All right. Camtasia has also pretty simple and easy editing, and what you're looking at here is you can see a lot of the. I'm gonna put on my annotator here. You can see a lot of the features, like this is your preview window, which you can see what your video is going to look like. And this down here, which we're going to talk about in a couple seconds, is the timeline. And every editor is going to have a timeline. And basically, time goes this direction. And then all of your elements, which would be video, audio, transition, so you can fade in from scene to scene, or animations where you can move things around the screen, they all exist in this timeline in what's called layers. And those layers are basically layering things on top of each other. So everything that you see on this screen is a layer. The logo for my college is its own asset, that's a layer. The text is its own asset, that's a layer. And those are both on top of a photo of a building at my college, right? And all of those are built on top of each other in this direction. So anything that is down here will be behind things that are up here. So this is basically how all of the editors will work. You have assets or elements, which are your videos, your pictures, your text, or anything that you add in there, and then those go in layers along a timeline that will run as your video goes. And that's basically how all of the editors will work in that. And again, Camtasia is not free. I don't work for Camtasia, so I don't make any money selling Camtasia, but I've been using it for over 10 years, and it's gotten really, really good. There's a discount for educators, so you can get it relatively inexpensively. I'm not sure if this is what it still costs. They've had an update recently, but it's for what you get, it's really reasonable, and if your school's willing to pay for it, even better. Another thing, like Tabitha was saying, you could make a real nice video with the free version and kind of use that to kind of induce your school to say, wow, that's really worth it for us to put out a couple $100 American. So, all right. So we talked about timelines and layers already. So in iMovie, it's same thing. There's an audio. This is an audio track. This is a video track. And then this is my text track. So here's our son Joey running a race. I was able to annotate it with Joey's race, and the audio that's taking place is down here. Now, what I typically do is I record the audio and the video separately, and I record and edit all the audio first and lay that track down completely before I add any video. And then I just make what's happening on the screen match what I'm saying. When you record the audio and the video at the same time, it makes editing a little more difficult. So and for example, what a lot of people will do is they'll make a PowerPoint and then they'll just narrate themselves going through the PowerPoint. But then you can always separate your audio and video in most editors, but it makes it more difficult to edit when you've done it that way. If you lay your audio down and you've talked about all the things you need to talk about at the pace that you want to do, then putting video or still image tracks on top of that audio to match your timing, that seems to be the most efficient way to do it. That's what I've learned, because I used to do it the old way. I used to do it the other way, and over time I've learned a much more efficient way of doing it. So we talked a little bit about screen capture. So it's a recording of the activity on your computer or tablet screen. Camtasia has the built-in screen recorder I mentioned. Most operating systems will have a basic one as well, where you can record your screen. And what's another cool thing about screen capture is if you're using screen capture, you can use something like PowerPoint or Zoom as a whiteboard. So again, Zoom can also be your screen capture tool if you want, because you can record your activity in Zoom, and then you can download that recording and then import it into whatever editor you want to use. So that's another nice one. But with something like PowerPoint, so sometimes I'll do this, where if let's say you're a math teacher and you want to show them how to do some kind of multiplication, right? You can just use PowerPoint as a whiteboard. So what I use is a tablet like this. This is called from a company called Wacom. This was, I think, $50. It's a Bluetooth tablet. So if you're seeing my video, you might be able to see it. And it has a pen, and I just turn it on and then I annotate on. The other thing I do sometimes in PowerPoint is I will pull up an image, and like I was doing before, I can circle it. I can do that. I can write on it. So there's a lot of things. You can record that with a screen capture tool. And that can be kind of like you standing at a whiteboard talking to your students, if that's the kind of tutor video that you want to have, which is totally fine. It's a little like Khan Academy. If you're familiar with Khan Academy, and what Sal Khan does is he does a lot of inking while he narrates what he's doing. That's something else you can do is use PowerPoint as a whiteboard. Use Zoom. Zoom has a whiteboard feature. You click on screen share or share screen, and then one of your options is whiteboard, and you can annotate on that whiteboard. A lot of tablets will also let you do this, right? So there's a features in iPads where you can screen capture on an iPad, and you can also whiteboard on an iPad. So all of those are different things that you can then pull into your editor if you want. You could just narrate yourself talking over this if you want and just record that. Or if you want to just record yourself doing this problem and then put it into a video and then narrate it where you freeze the screen, you can stop motion it. And so that way they have time to look at what you're doing first before you move on. There's a lot of things that you can do in that timeline because that timeline allows you to stop time. So this is the timeline in Windows Movie Maker. It's very similar. There's audio down here. That's I'm inking in black, so that's not helpful. There we go. So this is the audio track. This is the video track. So very similar in terms of timeline. And then this is the timeline in Camtasia. So you could see this is a little bit more robust. This is kind of necessary for the kinds of videos that I've been making, where I have a lot of tracks. I've got, so far, what you can even see is 13, 14 different layers of things that I've got going on. You know, that's pretty advanced. So don't let that, it shouldn't be overwhelming. Don't forget, I've been doing this for over 10 years. So you can start off as simple as you need to and then really kind of build if you want. But Camtasia is a little more robust. And then on the left, what you don't have in the other ones that I really like are other options that you can use in terms of animating what you have, adding transitions, a lot of annotations. And I'm going to go in live and show you how I actually do this. And a lot of that's really nice. Now, what some people will do, and this is totally fine, if you're really, really power user, if you're a real advanced user in something like PowerPoint, you can animate elements in PowerPoint and you can make them move around your screen and you can record that as a screen capture. And that's totally fine. Like if that works for you, that's great. I tend to use animating features that are in the editor, that are in Camtasia, so that I can have them move around at the pace that I want them to move around and have them match my audio. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of how that works. So let's go live into one of my Camtasia videos and from the editing aspect, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. So let's see, I'm going to change my screen share. All right, you should be able to now see the editor for Camtasia. And this is a video that I made recently on the functions of skeletal muscles. Remember, I teach anatomy and physiology. So, and what I have here is, if you watch this video, oh, actually, you know what? Let me make sure that my computer sound is being shared. Okay. All right. So some gravity to oh, that's not working. To keep our skeleton. All right. Something's going on with Zoom where when I share my audio, it makes it real choppy. So I'm going to say forget the audio and I'll just show you the video portion. So down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see my audio track all the way at the bottom. Now, notice that there's some points where I've left a gap on purpose. So this is a point where I've stopped talking about this particular function. I let it pause for about 4 seconds, let them absorb it, and then I start moving on to the next function. So now you can't hear it because for some reason it's really messing up Zoom is messing up the audio. But everything I say pops up on the screen as I say it. So in the audio, what you don't hear is I just said that postural muscles contract to keep joints in their position. And while I do that, the text pops up at the same time that I say it, and an arrow points to one of those postural muscles. So the idea is is multisensory, making sure that they hear it and see it at the same time, and that they're drawn to what you're talking about. Otherwise, their eyes will be all over the place. I went to a presentation at a conference a few years ago, and someone did research and they tracked viewers' eyes to see what parts of the screen they were talking about when they were watching tutor videos, and they were all over the place unless they were being drawn to the right parts of the video. So it's hard to, when we're making the video, we know exactly what we're talking about, and it's hard to imagine that the students don't. And so we need to make sure that we're conscious of that. Then usually what I'll do is I'll try to do something like a transition. So the next one will transition into the next one, where I'll bring everything in from the other side and transition into the next function. Now, what you're seeing here is cadaver images that I have access to. There's tons of still images that you'll have access to, whether it's from the publishers of the materials that you use in your classrooms, or whether it's on the Creative Commons online. You can get things and you can make sure that they are available for full usage, where there are no licensing requirements, where you won't have to worry about copyright and things like that. You can usually, in Google Images, I'm going to show you real quick what you can do. If you don't know this, sorry, I know that maybe I underestimated how long we'd be, but I think we'll still be all right. Let me change my share to here. All right, so let's say I decided to make a talk about the pectoralis major. So I wanted an image of the pectoralis major muscle. So obviously you get all these images come up. When you go into Tools and click on Usage Rights, you can choose Labeled for Reuse. And now all of these images have been filtered so that you can use them without worrying about copyright. So a lot of them, like Wikimedia Commons, this one says maybe subject, so you want to maybe learn more about it. But this is a good way to start your filtering process to make sure you're using images that you don't have to worry about somebody asking you to not use their image in their videos. If your videos are unlisted and you're only giving them to your students, you're probably protected by fair use anyway, and which is a good thing. So you probably don't have to worry so much about it, especially if you're not making it available to the World Wide Web in general. You're just sticking it with your students in your classes, then you're probably okay. But if you really want to make sure, labeled for reuse is a good general tool to use to make sure that you are protecting yourself. All right, back to where we were. All right, so let me just show you real quick. I'm gonna
Steve,
add something.
can I ask you a quick question? On that
Sure.
last page, you checked labeled for reuse, and then lower it said labeled for non-commercial reuse or something.
Yes.
Is there a difference in which ones you tend to select?
I typically use labeled for reuse because I do make videos for McGraw-Hill. So some of my videos are actually commercial use.
Okay.
But if you're just using them for your class and you want to choose labeled for non-commercial reuse, you're safe because what you're doing is non-commercial. You're not selling your videos. So you're probably safe. I choose labeled for reuse because it's the safest. You know what I'm saying? So, but I think that if you're just making a tutor video for your students, that's just used in your class, and you're not going to be sharing it around and having people purchase access to it, which you're probably not going to do, then labeled for reuse is fine.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, labeled for non-commercial use is fine.
Okay. Thanks, Steve.
Yep. You got it. All right, so let me just show you real quick. I'm gonna actually add an annotation to this particular screen to show you how that would work. So I can see here, I can move around my timeline. So I'm moving my my timeline, moving through. I'm at 4 minutes and 4 seconds here. So if I wanted to label the liver on this, I could I click on annotations. There's arrows. It's real simple. There's all kinds of arrows I can choose from. And I'll grab an arrow. I just click and drag it on. And then I can make it as long as I want it to make it. And I can make it any color I want to make it. And I can change the thickness. So Camtasia makes it really easy to do some of this stuff. If I don't like this little ball at the end, I can change that too. So now I've already got an arrow right there, and it popped up right in my timeline. There's my arrow asset. If I want this arrow to last longer in my timeline than the default, then I just click it and make it longer. And look, it's telling me how long that arrow will last on the screen. Now, it's not enough to just put an arrow. I want to also tell them that that's the liver. So I'm grabbing some text. Now, the text is in white, so I have to change it to black right there. I click on it. Right, liver. And then I have all kinds of features on the right side of formatting the text like you would with any other document. I can change the font. I can change it to semi-bold or bold. I can change the size, or I can change the justification. All that stuff is an option. And then I put it in my timeline, or it's in my timeline already. I make it match the length of time that the arrow existed, and at the same exact time that the arrow existed. So it'll pop up at the same time. So now when I play this, it pops up like that. Now, if I'm saying liver, I want this to pop up at the same time I say the word liver, so the students see that's the liver. So again, this is just an example in my discipline. You can apply this to so many different things. Now, I might also want to make it so this doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. Maybe I want it to come in from the side, so I'll add an animation to it. So down here you'll see animation, and I have a lot of choices for animations that I can use, or I can do a custom one. I drag it over. I can make my timeline a little bit bigger. So now I have these little arrows, and this is telling me how long it will take for the animation to take place. Right now it's at about half a second or a quarter of a second. I can make it take a full second. And if in the beginning of that arrow, the animation, I'll put the liver out here. And at the end of the animation, it will go back to where it was. So it starts off the screen. I put custom animation arrows in, and then I decide where it will be when the animation's done. Will be back on screen. And now when I play it, it does that. Right? And so this is a really simple animation, but you can apply this feature, and I don't have time to have a tutorial on how to do this today, but to anything you want to do. And so eventually you can make it have it so that you can animate images, and you can animate text, and you can animate pretty much anything you want, and really try to make the video engaging and active and dynamic, so to really get the viewer's attention. So
Steve, you know what I'm thinking of? Do you remember in Sesame Street when they would pull in the words and it would be like "k, at, cat"? you know.
Right.
And when I don't know if that worked for other people, but that really worked for me. And it never occurred to me that even like simple phonemic awareness stuff you could do in here.
Yep. Here, we'll do one real quick.
So
I'll,
are all these options specific to Camtasia? It's not going to be available on iMovie? You said, because I know you said you can add some text, you can add some of the arrows, but is it not to this extent on iMovie?
yeah, I don't believe iMovie and Windows Movie Maker will have this capability.
And then you said that, and it does remind me of PowerPoint, like adding the arrows. It does kind of look like a PowerPoint slide and adding all the animation. But when you do it on PowerPoint and you screencast it, you'll see all, or like the viewer will see all the edits that you make while you're like enlarging the text, or is there a way around that?
Well, what you would do is you would record yourself in presentation mode in the PowerPoint, so they just see the actions happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Thank
then
you.
again, it's going to be way more difficult to time them to your audio.
Okay.
So, like I said, so if I say liver at 4:01, I just move this to 4:01, and I can match it up with my audio track that's down here. So I will say I did start off doing animations in PowerPoint and recording them. This is much more efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But just real quick, I'll show you how we can do exactly what Tabitha had mentioned. So if I take these, this is where I want this word to end up. And what I'll do is I will go to the beginning of the time and have one go off the camera here and one go off the camera here. That's where they'll start. And I know that where they'll end is there. So you can bring syllables in like that, or you can have them just pop up at the right time. But like what Tabitha had suggested, I was able to do in 10 seconds, right? It's really, once you kind of get the hang of it, a lot of this stuff will just start to click. And you'll be like, oh, I would love for it to look like this. And they're like, oh, I can make it look like that. Yeah, it might be a little overwhelming at first, but it is, once you get into it, it is not that hard to do. And like I said with Camtasia, everything's pretty much click and drag. If you want this picture to fade in, just click on full opacity and just drop it down. And it will fade in instead of just pop up. So all of that's pretty simple with something like with a tool like Camtasia. And again, I endorse it because it's worked so well for me. Other than my subscription to it, Camtasia has no idea I'm doing this, so, or using it at all. All right. So any questions on kind of what this editor looks like? And like I said, most of the editors will look very similar to this in terms of layering and timeline and viewer, your viewable screen. The features is where you're going to really, have issues. So I'm going to open it up to some Q&A. But first, before I do that, I want to go back to the PowerPoint real quick and just go over some final like tips, and then I'll take some questions. So, because some of those tips might actually be frequently asked answers to frequently asked questions. Where is PowerPoint? There we go. All right, so I talked about recording using an external mic. So we didn't talk about on camera or off camera, but I will mention real quick. I do have a little bit of an on camera intro and outro for my videos. I present the topic with myself on camera. I use a little whiteboard animation that I'll put a couple things on to present the topic, because I think with remote learning, it's nice for them to have a little personal connection to the instructor, and seeing me in the beginning of the video, I think helps. Here's the teleprompter app I mentioned earlier. It'll run your script up next to your camera on your phone. Most phones have a HD front-facing camera now, so it's likely you have one, and that's going to be really nice quality for that. All right, some quick things I mentioned: write a script, read the script aloud more than once, rewrite the script because you're going to have to rewrite it, read it aloud and time it, like I mentioned to Win earlier. I mentioned record and edit the audio first. That's a tip of mine. I think it's going to save you a lot of time. Under 5 minutes. These are mostly just review. And then add video media to align it with your already edited audio. And then you can add any transitions or effects or animations or annotations, the words, the arrows, all those things you can do after that. Watch it, proofread your annotations, make sure that there's no typos in what you've annotated. And then you can post it to YouTube or some other streaming server that works for you. I mentioned the unlisted and private options that YouTube has. And then you can just post the link to your learning management system or your website. And that should work. I recommend, if you're going to be making a lot of videos, get yourself an external flash drive because they take up a lot of room on your hard drive. Record at the highest quality possible and then compress it later. So don't record to save room on your hard drive because you will end up with a grainy recording. Save your final product, excuse me, in a compressed format later. And then we talked about whether to use PowerPoint or not. Also, recording your audio in a small carpeted room is probably going to give you the best quality. And if you're going to record yourself on camera and you have access to a green screen to give yourself a nice background, don't wear green. This is mostly for my class at NIST in Bangkok. We actually had access to a green screen, so we got to do some fun stuff. All right, so let's open it up to any questions that you might have.
Steve, I have a question about, we talked about images and like finding using labeled for reuse for like image to avoid like copyright. What about for audio? I'm thinking of maybe including like excerpts or things or sound bits from like actual cartoons or something in my videos. How do I check if they're...
So now I'm not a lawyer, but I think that as long as you use clips that are 30 seconds or less, you're okay.
30 seconds.
But you might want to double check on that. I don't typically use audio that already exists. A lot of the editing software you can get, especially Camtasia, has audio files already in there if you want some music. So they have music tracks that you can use that are, if you're a subscriber, that you are free to use at your discretion. But getting audio from online or getting like a clip from a cartoon, I think that as long as you keep the clip under 30 seconds, I think you're pretty safe, especially if you're not making any money off of your videos. If you are just using it for educational purposes, you're probably protected by fair use.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding the Camtasia that you showed. Sorry if this is a dumb question, but the actual document that you were showing, the white slides, were those actually constructed in Camtasia, or did you bring that into Camtasia and then animate on top of that? I was just confused what that core document was.
The white slides?
Yeah, like when you show the skeleton on the, what was that core document? Was that a PowerPoint that you were then animating on top of, or did you build that in? What was that?
I built that into Camtasia. I'll show you real quick.
You can do everything from scratch in Camtasia. Like you can literally build your entire presentation in Camtasia.
Absolutely.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. I'll show you real quick what that would look like. So I'll go to the end of this time. At the end of my timeline, all I have is a black screen. This is nothing. This is empty space. right? There's no core document behind this. So all I do is I click on annotations, and then here you'll see shapes. I choose just a white background, and I make it the size of my viewing screen. And that's where I start from. And everything else I draw in. So I can draw my media in. This is media I've already uploaded. So if I want to draw in a muscle cell, I drag that in, and now I've already gotten started from scratch. Does that answer your question? Were you all able to see that or hear me? I'm hearing just nothing. Oh, yeah. Did that answer your question? Okay, good.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Steve?
Yes.
An outside caller wanted to know, how'd you get a haircut during the pandemic?
I got a haircut yesterday on the first day of Pennsylvania's green phase.
Oh, sure.
I did. So did Ben and Joey. So yesterday was the first day in Pennsylvania you were allowed to get a haircut commercially. So I did that.
Steve,
any other questions? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I have one question. I did record, although I'm not certain if it's because I used like a very bad recording option, photo booth, instead of iMovie, which I just discovered you could record a while ago. But I did like upload a YouTube video. When I listened to like the audio quality, it was really succinct on both photo booth and on the iMovie Maker, which I edited with. But after I looked at the published product, you can barely hear anything until I put the volume all the way to max. I'm wondering, is there some processing thing that's happening?
There might be. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't use those particularly, but there might be an issue when you exported it in the audio settings. So you want to choose the highest quality audio settings that you can choose when you export your video. So one thing I didn't show was how to export your editing file into an actual viewable video, which most of the editors will have will have what's called share, and share means you're going to start sharing your video. Most of the time, Camtasia, Windows Movie Maker, iMovie, they all have an option to share directly to YouTube or to share to their own streaming service. I typically avoid those altogether because they usually don't work. So what I usually do is I share it to a file on my hard drive. Now, when you share, you will get lots of options. Here, I'll let me bring my screen back up and I'll show you the let's see, I'll show you iMovie. So here's my iMovie. If I click on File, you'll see Share, and I have a bunch of options. I can email it to someone, I can put it right to YouTube, put it on Facebook, Vimeo, make it just an image, or File. I go for File, right? So when I choose File, I can choose video, audio, or audio only. I can choose my quality, etc. So I don't have as many audio options here as I normally have. When I set up my preferences is probably when I will have the best. I'm not a big iMovie user, but when you set up your preferences, that's when you might have quality options for audio. I don't really see it. Again, I'm not really much of an iMovie user, but if given a little bit of time, I could probably find it. But you want to find your audio settings and have it at the highest quality audio you can. If I was to show it to you in Camtasia.
Steve, I've been using iMovie because I don't have Camtasia.
Right.
And I mostly just have my headphones in for recording, and I haven't had any problem with audio. So it's not been terrible, just with whatever the default is, because I haven't even dug in anywhere.
Okay. So the other thing that I would recommend is when you're in your editor, if you're seeing this as a chronic problem, right? So here's in Camtasia, I have some more options for customizing the quality of my audio. But what you'll notice is that you probably can increase the volume of your audio in your editor. So in Camtasia, at least, I can just click on this little box, this little line, and pull up and increase the audio, the volume on the output of my audio. You can also turn up what's called
You
the
could do
gain.
that in iMovie too.
Yeah, you probably can. It's just
You
a
can.
pretty standard process. All right,
So
so
are
you
you
can do the
just
same
drag
thing.
the bottom of the track and then it'll increase the amplitude of the volume?
Yep.
Or,
So right now I'm just grabbing this little line here and I'm changing the amplitude of the waves in the volume graph. And that should do it. And then see how that works. Especially if that's becoming a chronic problem for you, but it sounds a little it's not something that I've typically seen. But see if you can find audio settings first. And see if there's some kind, if you have it like on the lowest quality audio settings to save space on your hard drive, to save file size. Yep. Any other questions? Or anything they want to see?
I did have a question about like an external camera. I don't really like the quality of my camera and my laptop, and I don't know if I'm changing that. Can I do something else, like get one that like goes right on top of my computer or something else?
I mean, you can get one of these, but that might be a little bit much. But yeah, so you can. There's probably some webcams that you can buy that you can clip right onto the top of your computer. I don't know if they're going to be a higher quality than your computer. You'd have to check on the specs of the camera to see if you get something that records in 1080, which would be high definition. That's going to be a nice recording.
Okay.
So yeah, 1080 is what you're going to look for at a minimum right now to get high definition video, which is really what everyone's expecting at this point.
Okay.
I want to tag in on what everybody's expecting at this point because this is specifically for my students in internship one. What you guys are being taught here is what you're going to use as professional teachers going into the world, creating these types of tutor videos that you're going to use. If you want to take a little bit of comfort in the fact that for your internship one video that you're creating, this could be your first step in. This could be way back when Steve was, recording his video and audio at the same time. If you look at the video that I've made for the flipped lesson, super basic. Like I'd never done it before in my life. And so I came here to learn from Steve just as much as you guys are. So just know that it's a process. Take it a step at a time. If you go low tech on this first one, feel great about it, and then know that you have these resources to, yeah, I see you, Talia. So, yeah, just know that you have all of this information to take it further when you need to take it further, and that you don't have to hold yourself by all of these standards at this point.
Yeah, Jessica, that was sort of my question was like, if we go with for the technically challenged like myself, my low-tech version that I was thinking of starting off with was PowerPoint. I have a lot of experience doing PowerPoint and then recording myself, having a conversation with myself on Zoom effectively. And that's how I was going to go about it. Is that kind of the low-tech?
Yeah.
The lowest tech option here? Okay.
For me, it's my lowest tech option because I know how to use Zoom, but it's whatever you're comfortable with.
I don't think that there's anything wrong with using Zoom to record your video. I think Zoom does a pretty good job. I would definitely, I would not recommend against it if you know how to do it. I default to the things I know how to do almost all the time. So yeah, so it takes a lot of time to learn something new this quickly, but recording your video and audio in Zoom is totally fine.
And I'll just add, so for instance, like last Monday, we had an hour and 55-minute class. And I did it in Zoom, I recorded it, and then I imported it into iMovie and deleted all the times when like my class was in the breakout rooms. So that if they review the video, they don't have to watch me just like sitting in the chair, right, for all that time. So I deleted those parts, and I dropped in a little title that said like, this is where we went into breakout rooms and talked about X, right? So I did that in Zoom, but I still use the editor so that on the back end, if my students actually view that video, it's cleaner for them. So you might want to learn how to use the editor even for simple things like that.
Cool. Any other questions?
Just one last question. Steve,
Sure.
Tabitha, are you Mac users by chance? I'm just wondering, I can look it up myself. I'm wondering what would be a good microphone for me to buy. Like, I think my Mac is a Mojave OS 10.14.6.
We are both Mac users, and I would say if you're going to be sitting this close to your computer while you record, any microphone that you can plug in to your computer and then pin to your shirt is going to be totally fine.
Okay. No, I'm presenting like from a whiteboard though, because like I'm going to do a bunch of drawings in there.
Okay, so then you need either something with a really long cable, or you can get a wireless microphone. There's a few on Amazon that are pretty decent. They're USB wireless microphones. I have, let's see, there's, I used to use one when I taught my class because I record all my in-person class sessions. If you go on Amazon, there's a few of them that are USB. I can't remember exactly the one I was using. But I know that I have it somewhere. Let's see. If you give me a second, I'll be able to tell you the make and everything on it.
I was just
actually, yeah,
getting
go ahead.
some.
When I
sorry.
will email you, I'm sorry to interrupt, but when I'll find the one I recommend and I'll email it to you.
Okay, that'll work.
It'll
Thank
take
you
me
so
too
much.
long to find it while we're sitting here.
Yeah, understandable.
Yep.
Understandable.
Yep. We'll bore everybody else while I'm looking at
Yes.
my purchase history on Amazon.
I was just asking my husband because he's been doing a lot of recording and stuff with wireless microphones, and he uses something called Aftershock, and it's a bone conductor, so you don't have the things in your ear, which I think he just likes for the production quality of seeing his whole face. But he said if you're not worried about that and you're using Mac products, then he's had some colleagues who've just used the straight up earbuds and they do a good job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's another thing. The AirPods will work too.
Yeah, that's it. AirPods.
Yeah. So if you have Bluetooth earbuds that have a microphone, they'll work as well. So that's another option.